Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Prosek. We have another very fun guest today, Sandy Lee. Sandy, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm ready to geek out over Saga. I don't know
Oh,
about
so
you.
ready. So ready.
Awesome. So today on the podcast, we are talking all about one of the most popular comic books running right now, Saga, written by Brian K. Vaughan and art by Fiona Staples. This is published by Image Comics, which crazy. I was just looking up about it. Saga. It's started 10 years ago. This is a massive, this is a long-term story that's been going on, but there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't read Saga or you're worried about stuff, we're probably going to be diving into, the deaths and the twists and the plot turns and such. But yeah, I wanted to do a podcast about this with Sandy because I only have maybe like one or two friends who've actually read this and read the whole first half, and so I was like, I gotta talk about it with someone. But yeah, before we get started, Sandy, you want to go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sandy, and I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised, where I did stand-up, and I'm a tax accountant, but recently moved to Sunny, California. So now I'm a Cali girl. And yeah, I have a lot of interests, a lot of them nerdy. So I've actually been really invested in Saga for a really long time. And super excited to be here to talk to you about it. Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram at Hey Sandy Lee. So
Awesome.
come find me, say hello.
Yeah, give her a follow. Yeah, before we jump into Saga, you said you're into things nerdy, so I'm guessing you've been reading comics for quite a while then, huh?
So I actually have a few guys that I dated to like thank because they introduced me to graphic novels. And I distinctly remember like they would get me like issues of Saga. And that's like one of the reasons that I really love this series too. Like it's so fun and I would not have been exposed to it if it wasn't for them. So very thankful to them. Also a lot of reading in general. I love reading in general. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Are there other comics that or graphic novels you'd say are like your tops that you'd recommend, or ones that like this you just like dove deep into?
Yeah, I really love Monstrous, which is like a really dark, like broody, like series about she's like a woman monster that has like a psychic link to the devil, I guess, or like another monster. So it's kind of like trying to unravel like what's going on. Also like the art is like very like dark and goth and it's really pretty. I also really like Paper Girls, and it's about four girls. They all have a paper route, and then there's time travel involved. So all
Ooh.
topics that I'm obsessed with.
Ooh, I'm a time travel fan, so I may need to pick up Paper Girls when
Yeah, it's also on Hoopla. So if you are, like to just read on your phone, it's on Hoopla. And I really like Snot Girl. It's just like influencer whose life is like so messy with like friends and exes and frenemies and it's really playful, really fun. And I noticed I think they're all on Image Comics, so I obviously have a certain set of a
yeah.
type of series that I
Well,
like.
no, I mean, one thing I have to say, and I'm constantly trying to tell friends who aren't, keeping up with like current graphic novels or stuff that's just been out in the last 20 years. Image, and there's other ones, it's not just Image, but that is like the go-to one that I tell people to check out some stuff by them because everyone thinks comics, they just think superheroes, they just think people with powers. And while yes, Marvel, DC have been doing that since the early 1900s, they're just like TV or movies, there's entire other genres of graphic novels. And I think a big reason also I wanted to talk about Saga is because this has to be one of my like top few favorites that I've read so far. And I think it's just like a perfect example on how a totally original idea can be just as engrossing as, you know, like a Star Wars or a Game of Thrones or, you know, Marvel movies, whatever. Because it really sucked me in. And I think that there's been tons of other Image books. So like I know personal favorites like Chew, also by Brian K. Vaughan, Why the Last Man, The Old Guard, like there's Umbrella Academy. But yeah, there's tons of stuff that aren't superhero Marvel DC stories that are just so addicting. And like the twists, like the best way I could describe a lot of times these twists in these types of books is when you're watching a TV show and then like someone like dies and you're like, oh shit, you know, and it cuts to black and it's like, you know, see you next week or whatever. It's like, that's what comics does too to me. And I'll be just like reading by myself. Like my girlfriend will just be like working on something and I'm like, oh shit, you know, just to myself.
Yeah.
And so I just want to tell more people about that it does that, comics.
I feel like that and K-dramas also do that too, where like if it's a good K-drama, I'm like yelling at the screen or at the page like, oh honey, no, don't go, don't do it. Or you're just like screaming, oh shit, or like, oh no, this is gonna end bad. Like you're so invested. And I think that's another thing too. Like, yeah, all the comics that I had been introduced to before. Like, I think I've read some other, you know, superhero kind, but the way that the like characters, especially like women, are written, it's not as dynamic. It's not as like, it's not as fun. It doesn't seem as real. Whereas like this series, the way that they build all these characters that are definitely flawed,
Oh yeah,
not perfect,
absolutely.
but like the world building too is like so engrossing, and like you are rooting for them, and you know there's people, you know, that you like hate and you're like, ah, but then you still love them. Like they feel like very real. And so I think that was another aspect of this series that I really love, that they
Yeah.
do so well.
And I'm sure that, you know, because I've never been much of a like a book reader myself, but I'm sure, you know, people through book series and franchises have been saying this stuff for years. But the main reason that I wanted to highlight it in like comics, graphic novels is that there are so many other genres. Like, yes, this one is like sci-fi. There are like Chew is more of a like procedural, but there's also like just bonkers, you know, Why the Last Man's like an apocalyptic. Obviously there's the popular one, The Walking Dead, which is a zombie story. So if you're like, oh, I'm not into superheroes, it's like, okay, well, there are tons of great graphic novels, and some of which are a very digestible length. I think that's something that I don't know about you, but like I look for stuff that like hopefully isn't going to be 400 issues, you know, stuff that has if anything maybe an end. And so like I know like, okay, you know, Chew was 60 issues, you know, and so I know that like as I'm getting to the end, it's like, oh man, stuff's wrapping up. And it feels like a almost like when you pick up a TV show that's done,
Right.
and you know that like it is going to end, whereas like if you're
There's a
watching it,
bow. There's a little bow at the end.
exactly. Whereas like some shows, you're like, if you pick it up in the first season, you're like, I could be watching this for the next 10 years.
Yeah. I feel like it can be really overwhelming when there's, you know, hundreds of episodes, and I'm like, I don't have time to invest
Right?
into all of that.
For
Also,
sure.
there's no guarantee that the story is gonna be, you know, at the same pace throughout.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that they do so well here. Like literally I read them by volume. So at the end of every volume, you're just like, wait, there's no more, there's no more pages.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
One last thing I'll say about Image in regards to that is Image is a company which allows their creators like pretty much creative control and they own the rights and, everything. So they can decide, like, you know what, I want to release this in this many chunks, or like, I want to only make 12 issues of this, whatever it may be. So it is easy for them to have a bow, because like it's the same creative team usually from start to finish, and they don't have to worry about like editors at Marvel and DC be like, oh, that's too much, you don't want to do that, or you can't do that to that character. It's like, these
Yeah.
are their characters' original work, and they could do whatever they want. And so yeah, I also read Saga in volumes, and those were about like, was it like 5-6 issues each or something like that?
Yeah.
And so to me, those almost felt like usually like either a half season or like a season of a show, where
Yeah.
yeah, there's usually a full arc, also
Hmm.
some mini arcs. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I rented them from my local library, and I would often, once I got really going, I had to keep renting them in like 2s or 3s until I was done
Yeah.
with all 9, because I knew as soon as I was done, I was like, I want to pick up the next one right away. Because like you said, it ends in a way that's so satisfying, but also maybe a cliffhanger. And it's like, shit, I put this one down, get the other one.
Yeah.
you know.
Also, I like feel like I have done some like writing workshops, and like when I'm thinking and even just consuming the story as a reader, and then you like take a step back and you're like, holy shit, what this person is writing and the world that they've built in this short amount of time, and the
Mhm.
investment that they've created, and the backstories of all these characters that are showing up on the page. And it's just like, wow, they're so talented in what they're doing and in their work. And it's just like another level of like, damn, like this is a good story
Yeah,
in a
for
cool
sure.
world. Yeah.
So I'll just do like a tiny intro of like what the story is actually about for Saga.
Okay.
Um, just so that everyone, if you're interested, please check it out. The reason that I decided to jump in, one, because I love Brian K. Vaughan's Why the Last Man, but also everyone said, they're like, it's kind of Game of Thrones meets Star Wars, and because like, it is sci-fi, there is like a war happening, but it's also like sexy, and there's like political backstabbings, so it's like, oh, I see how those two worlds merge together. But
Mhm.
yeah, our main characters, which it's gonna be weird, I've never said their names like out loud because I've just read them in my head, but
Yeah.
it's Alana and Marco, who they are from basically two opposing species who have been at like this galactic war for years, and almost in a Romeo Juliet situation, they fall in love and they're on the run. They have a child, Hazel, and it's this interesting story because they're able to do so much commentary on war, and also kind of some stuff touching on the characters wanting to be pacifists, but then they're thrust into violent situations. And there's all these supporting characters that I didn't realize started becoming bigger, like the world kept just like expanding. And so a lot of the
Mhm.
supporting characters feature like various hitmen or hit people after the main characters, or like people they
Mhm.
meet along the way, or they join along the crew. And yeah, I had no idea when the book first started. I'm like, okay, is this just going to be them on the run the whole time? Like, where's this going? And it's like, yes, but also all these other side stories that start developing to where you're like, damn, I didn't know I would start caring about so many characters at the same
Yeah.
time.
But then also, I'm like, that's kind of how it is in real life, right? Like when you're living day to day, like you just have a chance meeting and you don't really understand the extent of how well you will get to know them, or whether they become part of your family, or whether they're just like a person that you meet once and that's it. And so I thought that part was really interesting. I think like also the way that they, like in my mind, I'm like, this is like, okay, if Romeo and Juliet had a family, like what would happen?
Mhm.
And also like their definitions of love and like what family looks like, and the way that they explore that in so many different ways and different situations is really
Yeah.
beautiful and sad and depressing, but also really amazing. And so I think that's another element to the story that's like fun and like kind of has like rom-com type elements too. Like,
Yeah, because like
yeah,
the characters, they I don't know if they say how much time has passed when it starts, because like it starts with not long after they've had the baby, but like they hadn't known each other that long, but they were like, they knew that they didn't want to fight in this ongoing war between their people that they didn't quite believe in. And so there's a lot of like ups and downs where they're like, even though that they're like married in their eyes and have a kid, they're like still learning a lot about each other, and just encountering things from their past. And it's like, oh, I didn't tell you about so and so, you know. And I just think it's such an interesting dynamic to have these characters who like they're so in love and they see like you want them to stay together, but then they're also not, like they haven't known each other for a decade. I think they knew each other for what, like weeks or something before they
yeah,
went on the run. Like it's
yeah.
almost uh like a honeymoon phase, new relationship energy, just like we're gonna run away
Yeah,
and face the world together.
it's like a Romeo and Juliet, like shotgun wedding type vibe. Like,
Yeah,
well, I guess we're on the run
yeah,
together. I
right.
mean, I guess. And then they're like, oh, I guess we're having a kid.
Yeah.
But then like the meaning behind this child is like the significance of this child. I think that also is like kind of an element of like a kind of almost like religious level, like the significance of this child existing, representing like the harmony and the possibility of two people from different worlds like
Mhm.
being together, and like it's like a symbol of their love. Like that alone is so beautiful, but then it's like, oh, but the whole world is not ready for that and is not prepared for that and is willing to extinguish it at any cost.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and so like that's the thing, when we mean a galactic war, like it's not just like, oh, their planet and they got to get off their planet. It's like, no, the entire like universe, it's like everyone has a side. You're either with like the Wreath or like Landfall, and you know it's very distinctive that like people from Landfall and Alana, like they have wings, and then you know Marco and their people, they have horns. And so the fact that, like you said, like their child, what the symbol means is like she kind of has wings and horns, and it's just like what, like that's even so like the fact that like all these hit people coming after them, it's like their two planets like governments are like, we don't want the word getting out that like this is possible, you know, like
right,
we got to snuff this out so people don't think that this is an option. Yeah.
right.
You know, and it's like I think there's even, before people meet the child, that they're like, can your species even like do that, you know, like
Yeah, like is this
they've been
scientifically
brainwashed.
possible? Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that that's such an interesting element, that it's not just, oh, they got to get away from, you know, like if this was on Earth, it's like, oh, we're in the United States and we got to get to Europe. It's like, no, like they go to almost any planet, any moon, wherever, and someone has an allegiance to one side or the other,
Mm-hmm.
and both sides want them dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they want that child. And so it's literally like the highest of stakes. But yeah, and we get to see so many different worlds. But as we were saying, with all the supporting characters, who stuck out to you? Because I know you just recently reread, which I should specify, if you're curious how long Saga is right now. Well, for years they had the first 54 issues, which is what Brian K. Vaughan's calling the first half, have been out, or you can read it in like 9 volumes. But they just recently, in January of 2022, started releasing I think it was issue 55, and he's going to start the next half. So you have time to catch up. Like it's time
It
is
takes a
now.
while, but you have time.
It's worth the ride. As
It
someone
is,
who just
yeah.
read it, this fall, it is worth the ride. But I was going to ask, yeah, so what supporting characters, whether it was your first time reading or now this rereading, did you have favorites or they stuck out to you?
Yeah, I think so. Major spoilers, but I feel like Robot Prince 4 and Petrichor, this reading of it, I was like, oh my gosh, the struggles that their individual characters are going through and how they're interacting with all of the main core family members, but then also they're still figuring out their own identity and how that relates with their core values, but then also like, their actual relationship day to day with all of the characters was really interesting this read. I feel like before I was like, oh yeah, they're great. But then I think this time I was like, oh, these are like core elements to the story and like not only push the main characters to challenge them and how they define family, but also like really bring up like heavy issues
Yeah.
of Robot Prince 4, like he's obviously royalty, so there's expectations, and you know it starts off as he's just trying to be a family man and he can't.
Yeah.
Everything is
Well,
keeping him from being a family man,
and
and
that's
like,
what's, yeah, it's so interesting with Prince Robot that he is royalty, he's a prince, yet he's sent on this mission to, you
he's a
know
lackey.
yeah, he's pretty much a lackey. He gets sent out to be a hitman, and then is pretty much said like, hey, well, if you don't do this, your dad says you may as well not come home. And then I don't know when it was exactly in the arc, but like somewhere along the line, like he joins the crew, and like kind of like a mutual, like we're on the run. And it's almost like strength in numbers type thing, because like originally he was sent to kill them, but then once he's like ostracized and like exiled and like banished, he's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna take my son and
I
just
think mhm.
go on the run with them.
I feel like when I don't know, he was kind of out of it when his son was born, right? So then now, like, he wanted this family for such a long time, but then like he was injured, like he like kind of had amnesia, like he didn't even know he had a son, and then like the the princess, I think, was murdered, the son kidnapped,
Oh my God,
and
that moment I
now
had to like keep looking at the page, like, is this like a dream
what?
sequence?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, like, is this one of those things where it's like the character like wakes up like, oh no, that was freaky. Good thing that didn't happen. And I was like, no, that's happening. The princess is
Yeah.
dead. Holy shit.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, so this person, all he wants is his family, and like at every single turn, like, his son is kidnapped, like his son is kidnapped again. Like, so
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, this family is on the run, and like he's kind of like the parallel, right? Like he's trying to track the son down, or like, so like the love of their family is very similar, but the end goal is a little bit different in that, Alana and Marco are trying to keep their family together, whereas like Prince Robot 4, like he's on the chase, like he's
Yeah.
trying to track him down and like trying to retain whatever he can of his family that's left. And then
Yeah.
with, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and then with like Petrichor, I feel like I think when I first read it, I was like, oh, this person is like so badass. They're a trans character in this series, and the way that she interacts with everyone is like very like gruff and like very tough, but then also like so tender, like in the moments, in these like heart to hearts. I feel like she has the most heart to hearts with other people than other characters in the series. And I feel like there are these like clear moments of, oh, she really cares, but she's been hurt so many times. It's like you could just see it, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously she's been hurt so many times that like she's trying not to care, but she cares so deeply.
Yeah,
And like,
I like what stuck out to me, like you said about her character, is it finding a like a sci-fi way to have a trans character, but it's related to the main couple's child, Hazel, because you know she's young, and so she's asking a lot of questions, like because she's you know, she like doesn't really have an education. She's born into being on the run, and I'm
she's
sure just,
homeschooled.
yeah, like exactly, she's
She's
homeschooled.
homeschooled.
And so like she like asks, is it Petrichor? Is that how you, because I'd never
I
said it
think
out
it's,
loud yet.
I don't, I think it's petrichor. That's how I, petrichor. I don't know. That's how
Yeah,
I hear it in
that
my,
sounds right. But like there was this scene in particular that probably one of the more striking scenes of the entire first 54 issues is Hazel asking Petrichor, like, wait, are you a boy or a girl? You know, you have different parts. And like, I'm sure that at first it can sound like bad, and probably not exactly trans friendly, but then it's like, wait, she's a child, she's wanting to learn. And also she's like, well, it's kind of like how I have wings from my, like my mommy, but I have horns like my daddy. You know, it's like, oh, well, so she doesn't understand. And also she may be like the first of her kind ever. And so she is like asking about this to relate to like the duality of it, and trying to understand herself. And so I think, yeah, when Petrichor was first like, you don't get to ask me, you know, that's a rude thing to ask someone, you know. And she's like, oh, well, you know, she's a child. She's what, like 5, you know, she's just,
yeah.
yeah. So I think that scene always stuck out to me as like, wow, what a way to, I don't know, show you a different side of Hazel's character, because she's not interacting with her parents, but interacting with like other sort of like, I don't want to say parental figures
Other
necessarily, but
adults. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, other adults, because also she doesn't really get to have friends that often. She's,
Like they're never in one spot long enough that
yeah,
she has friends or, people to ask. And I think that was another thing too. Yeah. It's like, it's kind of a question of like identity, or how do, not what's placed on you, but how do you define yourself and who you are and what's true to you. And so um, I think it's amazing that she has this person around that is, it's not about what other people say, it's how do you define it, and figuring out who you are and being fully that version of you. I think that's so beautiful. And like,
yeah.
yeah, the conversations that that character has is like really eye-opening. And also it's like there's so much to learn.
Right, it's
Like,
like you didn't think in this like space opera action thing that there'd be such heavy topics, but also topics covered in such a respectable way.
and the way that they discuss abortion, the way that they discuss like reproductive rights, the way that they discuss like a lot of really heavy like rights issues, like prison, war, like government, like they're these really heavy tough issues.
Yeah, which I mean, the entire thing of like the two species going after each other, it's like there's a lot of like that could be related to race issues, and just
Yeah.
just discrimination. And yeah, it's the reason why I think it is one of my favorites is because it is able to handle all these topics. And I don't think in a way that I'm sure that some comic books, even 10 years ago, like this one, were probably like, ew, that doesn't age well, you know?
Yeah.
But reading that in like a 2021, you know, eyes, I was like, oh wow, this feels relevant and current yet still.
Yeah. Which is kind of sad because it's like, oh, these issues have been around for such a long time and nothing has changed.
Right? Yeah. Which, you know, it's one thing with like some of the, you know, like we said with superhero comics, they could be really iffy on like, you know, sexism or racial
Yeah.
things, or, you know, there could be stereotypes of like, oh, this villain from this other country talks like this and looks like this. And it's like, oh, God, this feels weird to read. But like
Yeah.
this one, just so respectful. And like there's often times where it's like a page where, yeah, they'll do like some commentary on war. And it's like, fuck, that hits, you know?
It's heavy. It's heavy shit. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also funny, and it's
Yeah.
also like lots of sex scenes, some weird
Also,
sex
they're like
scenes,
surprise sex scenes. I feel
right?
like
It's like you
always
flip
like,
a page and like I think that's how you're
oh,
introduced to Prince Robot, is him and the princess having sex, and I'm like, who is this? What is happening?
like, wait a second. But isn't that like, oh, isn't it called in media res or something, when you like start off like you're in the action, like you're literally in the action. You
Yeah.
start off in the action, like mid action.
Yeah, just introduce the character where they're, you know, they're going at it, and you know, we'll do
Yeah.
exposition later.
That also leads to the second point. I think every single character in this series is like attractive. Every single last one. I'm like, how is everyone so beautiful? And
How
how is
is the
everyone
lady who's like a spider but also has tits, you know?
I know, I was like, how like that would be terrifying. But also they make that character so sexy and appealing and like very scary.
Sandy's
Very
like, I don't
terrifying.
know who I'm attracted to anymore.
It's very confusing.
Sandy has 0 types now. Like,
I'm like, she's like a model tarantula, a lot of eyes, covered
yeah.
in like a black vintage couture gown. So
For
like
sure.
Rihanna, but a spider with
Yeah.
like lots of eyes and legs and boobs. So it's very confusing. But literally every single character, and like just I think it's also like kind of interesting that there's like this parallel of like the family, right? That's on the run, but the freelancers too. That's all one family. Like
Yeah.
all of the freelancers are related and or like
Well,
know one
yeah.
another and or connected. It's very incestuous group too.
So a character we haven't talked about yet, which I'm really curious what you think of him, the Will. The Will is the other
Very
main hit
hot.
person.
Yeah.
The
Will,
other
very
main
hot.
the other main hit person that we're introduced to with Prince Robot. And that was one of the first, you know, characters colliding, where Prince Robot runs into the Will's girlfriend, who's also a hit person.
The stock.
And then the stock, I couldn't remember her name. And
the Spider Woman.
Yeah, Robot kills the stock. And I was just like, oh shit, like that's gonna come back to bite someday. And you know, many issues later it eventually does. But it just, that's what's so crazy about it, is we're waiting for them to interact with the main characters, but little do we know that like, oh, well, that character is going to branch out to here, and then they're going to go on this side quest, and then they're going to run into this character. You know, it's I love how he plays with like Brian K. Vaughan writes the different characters' interactions, you know, the different characters running into each other. One of my favorite characters, I don't know if I'm saying his name, it's either Gus or Goose.
Yeah, I love
Goose. Goose. I
want to say Goose because of the
but I think he is a plushie, and I want to get it at some point. He's just adorable, just like this little, like, what would you even call him? Like a seal with hands and legs.
Yeah, he's like a he's like a seal that kind of is more shaped like a gopher or like a penguin, but
Yeah.
like also very good with weapons, very sassy, so
Very
sassy.
sassy.
But like so cute, like adorably cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I was gonna ask you
Oh, go ahead.
about, don't you like, I think it's interesting that like the wills, like all of the freelancers are like very incestuous, and that if you do like the tree of like how they're all related, like the will is with the stock, but then the new girl, Gwendolyn, is Marco's ex,
Yeah.
and then he also saves, you know, Sophie from the sex worker planet, like from trafficking.
Uh-huh.
But then like Sophie, like when given the opportunity to choose between the Will and Gwendolyn, like Sophie chooses Gwendolyn, right?
Yeah.
And also like Lion Cat, which is the Will's sidekick,
Yeah.
also chooses Gwendolyn and Sophie. So like his, well, and then his family sister, who's actually named Sophie, who's like the original Sophie,
Yeah.
aka the brand,
Yeah.
also like dies like trying to
Save
save,
the will.
yeah, and Sophie. So like it's like literally everyone that he loves and or cares about and or is messy exes with is either getting murdered or killed by each other or other people. And then like it's such like a sad story, and like he's this like tough bounty hunter, but
Yeah.
like also if you really think about, you know, the people around him, like they choose other people and or they're getting murdered and or, you know, he's trying to build his own family but it's not working. And
Yeah.
so like that is also like such a good story to like sink your teeth into too. Like he's trying to kill this family, but he can't keep his family alive.
Yeah, the will, I think, is such a I feel it could be such a what's the word? Not controversial character, but a character that can really be loved or hated, because of like the arc he goes on. Because yeah, he it seems like him and Gwendolyn kind of fall for each other, which that felt like it's like, oh, that must have happened like off panel. You know what I mean? Like their chemistry building, but he gets injured, and then like you said, the brand and Gwendolyn and Sophie go on this adventure to get a thing to heal him, but in doing so the brand, aka original Sophie, gets killed, and then the will lashes out on Gwendolyn and Sophie, kind of like, fuck you for saving me, you know, like why would you do that, like my sister deserves to be alive more than I do. And yeah, it makes you wonder, because like, yeah, they at that point, that's where people choose sides and they split off, and it's like, wow, are they ever going to come back together? And then that's where, you know, at the end of this first half, when he finally interacts with the main family again, it's like, man, when was the last time the will was near Marco and Elaine? You know, it
Yeah.
felt like forever ago. It felt like he's just like, you know, the sideshow with the will, you know, and his crew with their misadventures.
But also I feel like it's bad juju. Like you're trying to kill this family, and at what cost? Like you had to give up your family, your sister, everyone that you love in order to try to break up this other family.
Yeah.
Like, that's just karma. Karma's coming back.
Yeah. One thing that they also I'm forgetting, pull up the name of the characters. Upshur and Doff are like these tabloid journalist and photographer couple who kind of come in and out of the series, which I thought was an interesting perspective, because like they want to get the word out about the fact that there is a child between someone from Wreath and someone from Landfall, and they're kind of like sidetracked for a while, and then eventually they're brought back. And I don't know. I think the idea of having like this gay alien couple duo going across the galaxy trying to like get the word out, I was just like, I feel like that is very relevant, that there's secrets always being covered up by governments, and there's people going on these adventures trying to tell the truth.
Yeah. I think also I thought of it as like, okay, their love is misunderstood all the time, and they're discriminated against all the time. And like for them, maybe it was like, see, Hazel exists. Like a symbol of this impossible love exists. So like, why can't you accept? I wonder if that's why they were so invested in this story too, because like they saw themselves in the story. Like their love is this impossible love where they keep having to like leave whatever planet that they're on because they're not accepted and their relationship is not accepted anywhere. And even when they're planet hopping, it's still not accepted, and
Right.
they're still they're still like persecuted against. And so like I wonder if I saw it as, oh, the story of Hazel and her family is this like bright light, like this is possible, this is like it's in the world, and so why can't our love be accepted too?
Yeah.
I don't know. Also, they're journalists, so you know, I get it. I love gossiping. I love secrets. I get it. Spill your guts.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot of the supporting characters. So let's talk about the main few characters with Marco, Elena, and you know, we talked a little bit about Hazel. So what did you think of like their journeys so far with these characters? Because like I found Marco's especially compelling, because well, both of them talked about being, you know, like conscientious, I can never say that word, conscientious objectors, you know what I'm saying, like conscientious
objectors,
objectors, and they don't want to fight in this war of each of their people, and they also don't want to use violence in any way. But like I feel like Marco especially struggles with that because he wants to fully be a pacifist, and he was apparently like they were both soldiers. Like he was, I think, like, you know, they had both in war killed many of each other's people, and it's like this series constantly wants to put him in situations where he has to, it's like, well, are you really to say no to violence when you need to do this to protect your family, or you need to get this to save your kidnapped child? And I don't know, what did you think about like this struggle that Marco's been dealing with violence and, you know, pacifism?
I think the moments where it's obviously like very heavy and a hard decision is like it's rooted in his family dynamics and like in memories and in the flashbacks that he has where he's a child and, you know, he's with his parents, and like the role of violence and war that has been and is like the foundation of their history, right? Like in his background, in his past, in his history, violence was like violence and war and being a warrior was like it. That's how they feel pride in their family. They're a family of warriors. Like they fight. Like that's, and like, so I think the fact that he's having to battle that within himself, like, I think that's a pretty human thing. Like, you always fight something that you don't want to be part of your identity, and whether or not that really aligns with the values that you want to hold. But in order to do that, you have to accept that that's a part of you, right? So I think that that's a very real thing. he doesn't want to be violent. He doesn't want to engage in violence. But in order for him to uphold his family in this situation, there's no other choice.
Yeah.
There's
I
literally no other choice. So I think if he didn't resist it as much, if he just accepted, okay, in certain situations, I will do whatever I can, no matter what, to protect my family. And if he accepted it, maybe it wouldn't be that difficult of a choice for him.
yeah. Well, one character it kind of reminded me of. Were you a Game of Thrones fan at all?
Like yes and no. Like I okay, so like I watched
I take Sandy hated Game of Thrones.
no, I've watched a few seasons, but I watched them with someone that I was dating at the time. So then like when we broke up, I just stopped watching it, right? But then like I
We
knew
got
what was going on at
Sandy, we
every
got to
episode.
watch it together. You gotta, or you got to give it another chance.
But I knew what was going on because like everyone was always talking about it. So I would probably just like read the recap and be like, all right, like but not watch it. So I know what happens. I know what's going on, but I didn't watch it at all.
Well, Marco, because it seems like, yeah, like you said, he comes from a family of warriors, and it seemed like he was particularly like good as a soldier. It reminded me of the Jon Snow character. There's a comment that he makes in the later seasons because Jon Snow is a big great fighter, and he survives a lot of different battles and sword fights. And I think there's a comment that someone makes where it's just like, oh well, we all love like what we're good at, and like Jon Snow basically in not so many words makes a comment just like, oh, I don't love what I'm good at, because like he implies like he doesn't love that he's good at killing, and I think
I mean,
that's
that's a tough.
something. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something that Marco struggles with, and is like, it's like I'm good at this thing, but I hate that I'm good at this thing.
Yeah, because it brings so much pain to other people. But then also it's like it, I mean, what's the other choice?
Right?
You just let them kidnap your family and kill you and or experiment with you and your family. Like, what's the other choice? Like, there's no
Right?
other choice.
It's
So
like if you guys were just normal citizens, then yeah, I'm sure you could find a way to avoid violence. But when you're literally all
on the lam.
fugitives,
Yeah.
like sure, there's a difference between like outright attacking people just for like the fun of it, and like you said, like, well, if I don't do this thing, they're gonna take my daughter.
I think that's like the writer made such an amazing choice, right? Because if Marco did love killing, it wouldn't be there wouldn't be as much drama or conflict because
Sure.
he's just gonna hack through whoever gets in the way. But like because you know he's battling that within himself, there it adds more drama. It adds more like obstacle. So I mean, I think it's on purpose. And
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So what was there anything either you related to with Marco, or you just that stuck out to you about his character?
I just kind of like pictured him as kind of like a kind of like an emo, like a like a sad guy. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like a very like emo sad guy. I like envision him like in a movie, like it was John Cho, right? Like I just picture John Cho playing him, and like he's just like
Ooh.
kind of like emo, broody, like sad, or Keanu Reeves, even like a emo, sad, like broody guy who's like going through a lot of like thoughts and feelings like inside.
Wow, I want to hear more of Sandy's fan casting.
Oh, I
We're
had
gonna have
them.
to. Oh yeah,
And
Keanu
then
Reeves and John Cho for Marco. Oh boy.
it's just like kind of like always broody, like always thinking, always feeling, even though it's not, but it sometimes doesn't come out exactly the best. But like under the surface, constant brooding. Um,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I pictured him. Also, like, I don't know, he like I the part that I really really like is like they have this like ode to like rom-coms where they like show the meet cute of him and Alana, and like it's just them reading a book together. Like if you
Yeah.
boil it down, like he's assigned to do hard labor and they just start reading
Yeah,
a
he's a
book
prisoner of
together.
war and she's a guard, and they start reading a romance novel
Yeah,
essentially.
and like I think the first time that they meet, like she like headbutts him with her rifle. Like that's how they meet. That's and like
Yeah.
like I think that's really cute because I feel like in character their personalities are like very complementary, right? Like he's like very kind of like thoughtful, broody, and she's badass, like kicking ass all the time, very tough. You can
Yeah.
just tell from the way she looks, she's like doesn't take any nonsense, like green hair, like she's kicking ass everywhere. So
Yeah. Which, so we talked about Marco. So what are your thoughts on, I'm not sure if it's Alana or Elena. I don't know what you say, but
I say Alana. That's in my brain. That's how I hear Alana. I pictured Stephanie Beatrice.
okay.
Yeah, and yeah, but I think like I love rom coms, so I love that she's also this like very tough, like you know, badass woman, but then also like she's a big softie too. Like
Yeah.
who's reading rom coms to their prisoner of war
Right. And
on,
then
on the job?
they meet the author.
Yeah, like they're fangirling so hard. They like go
Right.
track him down, like but I think that's kind of like really nerdy and like really cute. And also it's like kind of funny how they like interact with one another too. Like they're kind of always like butting heads a little bit. Um, but I mean the lengths that they go for each other is limitless, but also it's not like explicitly said, right? Like it's through their action that they're literally going to the end of the universe to be together. Like
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
What one thing that I thought was really interesting with her character, that like I it was very divisive, and I was very much it like, I don't want to say villainized her character, but I was very frustrated with her character. Is like she does have an arc where she kind of gets addicted to drugs, because like they're kind of hiding out on a planet, and she gets like basically a job as an actress on like TV, which it's like you
Like a
think would
public
be,
access type
yeah, like soap opera,
of
like the worst, like well it seems like the worst idea, because she's just broadcasting her face even though she's wanted, but then they're like, is that almost like a perfect way to hide, is in plain sight? But yeah, they go through this arc where like, yeah, she's really struggling because she, has never wanted to be like an actress, and so she, like, they allude to her in the beginning, her sucking at acting, and the one character gives her drugs. They're kind of like, oh, this is what makes everyone else a better actor. And yeah, it really leads to like a big fight between the two of them. And I don't know, I don't want to say I chose sides, but like there's one line where like Marco, after like he finds out that she's been on drugs this whole time, is just like, wait, were you ever on drugs in front of our daughter? And it eventually gets turned into a different conversation. But I was very much like almost on Marco's side, that I'm like, that may be a big like boundary crossing moment for me with Alana, that like it just, it's not that I hate her character now, but in that moment it's like, man, you're really making me want to choose sides in this couple fight.
Oh, it's just Sandy over here. I don't know. I feel like But I've empathized with Alana so much because, okay, your family's on the run. You're the only one working. You're literally supporting your family. There's no escape. You work and you have to pretend like you're not you.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere. You're on lockdown. All you see is your family. Like, that's it. And
Yeah.
there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to escape to. And so then, like, I was like, okay, when she's doing drugs, like, this is her escape. This is all she has.
Yeah. Well, and
She
that's the
has nothing
thing. That's
else.
why I struggled. I'm like, it makes sense given their circumstance.
I think it's also challenging because it's like, I think it's challenging this idea of like gender roles too, right? Like, she's the breadwinner. And what happens to the dynamic of this family when, you know, the woman is the breadwinner, and like, what does that look like, and what kind of conflicts arise? I think that's an interesting thought because some people are not ready to consider that or what that means.
Yeah.
And also, it's like, it's a lot of pressure. Like, she has so much pressure on just her. Everyone else is kind of like in hiding mode, so they just kind of do whatever. Oh, I gotta say, when Marco was seeing Ginny, the dance teacher, I would just like scream at the page. I'm like, Marco, you better not, do not fuck this up. Don't do it.
You thought he was gonna cheat?
Yeah, I'm like, don't do it. No.
But he didn't. He did not.
He didn't. But also, it's just because, like, I think he was on the path. He was on the road. The only reason he didn't was because he saw Hazel's toy, and then like it came like flooding back. But if he didn't see Hazel's toy, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's something that, because they're a couple that like they got together, all of a sudden they're on a run having a kid, and like they're just on the run so much, it's like they never really got to, you know, get to know each other better and like see if they're even a right fit for one another, you know. But then like they have a great like physical chemistry and they have similar beliefs, but you know, when they finally get to kind of camp out and almost like play house on a planet for a bit, and that's where all of a sudden, you know, she's struggling with drugs, they're drifting apart, he's, you know, spending time with someone else, because yeah, they both don't have like true friendships or connections. It's just their family. And yeah, it's very interesting when we get to see kind of that arc where it's like, oh, well, what's it like when they're not on the run? And it's like, oh, well, there's still chaos.
Also, I was like, there's kind of a layer or like a parallel to, you know, people that started relationships in the lockdown the last 2 years, right? Because it's like, you have nowhere to go. You're
Yeah.
with them. You
Trauma
live
bonding.
with them.
Trauma bonding is big.
And there's no other rooms. It's just you and the other person. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You don't have any friends to see. Like, if you're on the phone, they can hear everything that you're saying. Like, there's no boundaries. It's
yeah.
And then it's like, okay, if you just met someone and then we're stuck in a room with them for that long of a time, like, oh, shit is gonna come up.
Yeah.
And then there's nowhere to run. So of course you're gonna take drugs to escape. I mean, I didn't really think of it as like villainizing. In fact, I thought it was more like humanizing. Like, she's a real person, and things started to get heavy, and you know, some people are runners, right? When things get tough, you just escape and run and
yeah,
ghost and disappear. But she has no way to do that. So
yeah,
like, but she's done that before, it seems like if
Mhm.
when it went back into like her history and her background, like her stepmom is like her friend. There's someone she went to school with and then became her stepmom and kind of made her life not so fun anymore.
Yeah.
home life not so fun anymore. And then like she ran away, and then like, you know, she ran away again from her post as a prison guard. So she's used to running, but then where do you go when there's nowhere else to run?
Yeah.
And you can't run.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that was interesting.
So I guess before we kind of talk about like where we left off in this first half, were there any other big moments or arcs that were, you know, especially your favorite or you wanted to talk about?
I really like Gwendolyn.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's a character that, you know, you can never tell sometimes if a character is just going to be around for a short bit or if they're going to stay around for a while. And I
yeah,
did not expect her to stay become like a full-on, you know, reoccurring supporting character.
yeah. I pictured her as like um Lupita Nyong'o, and I also was very, very obsessed with Lion Cat.
Oh, Lion
Like
Cat.
Lion Cat, it's just a character that just calls you out on your bullshit, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Which that's my job, my ideal job. Like if someone paid me to do that all day, that would
Yeah.
be so fun.
Lion
Be
Cat
like,
is a
bitch, you
Funko I want to
lying.
get so bad. If you couldn't tell, Funko collection. But yeah, Lion Cat, I love that all the Lion Cat's powers are is if someone says something that they're lying, the cat just goes lying. And then
It's
if
just
they
a
tell the
bullshit
truth, it just
detector.
yeah, and then
just to
yeah,
I forget what the word is. Um, just a bullshit detector
exactly.
in
Uh
cat form.
well, and that's what makes it funny for the moments where like someone says something and it may be like either emotional or whatever, and you're not sure if it's a lie, and they like look to the cat and like the cat doesn't say anything, and it's just like, oh shit, you know, that's real, you know.
But also, I feel like it's such a commentary on how much we lie day to day. Like, even our little white lies that we say to strangers, random people, people that we'll never see again,
Yeah.
family, like it, I think it's so funny because, you know, just the one word lying, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's really funny and like just really makes you think, okay, well, how much of that can you really incorporate into your life? Like, how could you be more truthful day to day? I think
Right.
it was a really interesting question for me to pose
Perfect.
myself.
Just like the perfect sidekick for a hip person.
Well, I
Right.
was thinking about that. I was like, okay, he's a bounty hunter. So, like, you're basically like tracking people down, right?
Yeah, and you're
So,
interrogating people to
yeah,
get
so you
information.
like that would be such a good sidekick. Yeah.
For sure.
If you need to hire me as my cat, call me for rates.
Oh my god. Yeah. So we got to talk about where things left off at the end of the first 54 issues. We finally get a convergence of characters where the Will's character, the Will was kind of dealing with, I can't remember the other bounty hunters, or no, it wasn't a bounty hunter. The one that had
the
the weird,
revenge, the
yeah,
revenge lover,
yeah. It was
the
like,
lover
oh,
seeking revenge.
yeah, it's like, oh, you killed my so and so, and
I couldn't get invested in that character.
right, like I don't know
I
if it was the design or like I don't know.
I think it was like, okay, we got a little bit of a reason of why they're there, but then it didn't feel like there was enough to like keep me invested for all of the shit that they did.
Well,
They were
right,
doing way too much. And
and
I was like, I get it, but also
like I feel like most of the characters went sometimes, like for example, like I feel like there's a lot of times where you would hate Prince Robot for like a certain thing, but then he would do something, it's like, oh well, now I know why he did that, you know, or like you see his point of view. But like that character who was on Revenge Against the Will, it was like, yeah, there's like almost no redeeming qualities. And like, yes, I
Yeah.
get it, they lost like the person that they love to the will. It's not that I should be rooting against them, but also feels like you're doing a lot worse than what happened to you, you know, like
Right.
you're like
Like doing
torturing
too
him, and
much. Just
yeah.
kill him and call it a day.
Oh, right. Like, um, so, but yeah, so those characters finally converge with Marco, Elena, Hazel, Prince Robot. And first there's a showdown between Prince Robot and the Will, where, spoiler, oh my God, the Will kills Prince Robot.
For
So,
murdering
what's that?
for murdering his ex. Yeah.
Yeah, something that I feel like, I don't know if it was in the first volume. It was in like one of like the first couple, right? Where the stock was killed. Like it was an
Yeah. I think
early
that's the first
twist.
one.
But let's just say, like, imagine something happening in like, I don't know, season 1 or 2 of a show. And then all of a sudden by like season 5, 6, like finally that person gets like the revenge. But now you've gone on this whole journey of liking the person that you originally hated it. And it just, yeah, man, that was, I knew that like one of those two characters had to die at some point between like that dynamic being set up, but it was still done in a shocking way.
Hmm. And like
Um, go ahead.
also it's like they're both the same person. Like they're both just trying to keep their family together and got caught up. It was the first volume. So the first volume is when Robot Prince 4 murders the stock. And
Wow.
so it's also funny because, you know, the lengths that the Will goes to avenge his lover's death is kind of the same as the length Ianthe, who's like the blackmailing person, revenge lover,
Hmm.
goes to avenge I think it's her lover's death.
Yeah.
Um, but I think maybe it's because, you know, we don't see the investment on Ianthe's side, that maybe that's why we're not on her side.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
also because while they like haven't been around to develop their character at all, it's like, yeah, we've been through all this journey with the Will, and kind of a redeeming thing is how the Will saves Sophie from the sex worker planet. And it was just like,
Sextillion. Yep.
um and because she's like what, 9, like she's like a just straight up child. And so someone who is a hitman and is going after our main couple is given this very redeeming thing to where now we like him. But
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, he has killed people, so then you're following this other person going torturing the Will. And then yeah, that showdown with the Will and Robot, I was like, I don't know who I'm mad at like in this situation. It's like a bit of
Yeah.
both with both of them.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's like, okay, the Will doesn't know. I think it's kind of like that, like ricochet effect, right? Like the interactions that we have with people can affect like third parties that we've never met or don't know
Yeah.
or don't know exists. And like everyone has history and everyone is both good and bad, right?
Yeah,
Everyone has an angel and a villain in
they're
them. So
like you said, they you hit it on the head that Prince Robot and the Will like are the same. Like they both lost, they both of their, you know, wives or girlfriends were murdered.
yeah.
And while they've been trying to handle this mission with the main family, and Robot kind of has more of a redemption, whereas the Will kind of, I think, started with the redemption, but now I think to some people can just be seen as the like a villain.
I mean, I also think though that Robot Prince 4, like he also had a turning point moment when he was face to face with Dango, who is this like, so in the robot kingdom, like Robot Prince 4 is like the newest edition of technology, and Django is like the commoner class, or like the lower class, like black and white version of TV monitor. And so he had an opportunity to, save Django's life and spare his life, but he chose not to. So I think it's like, okay, if you think about it, it does come full circle. Like, yes, Robot Prince 4 has had opportunities to grow and all that, but when he was in that same position, he took lives every single time. So it would be unrealistic or unfair to expect the will to behave differently.
Yeah. God damn, the story's so good.
So good.
Like
every time I read it, I'm like, dang it, I missed that the first time, second time, whatever time.
And this is why I wanted to talk about it with someone, because it's like, wow, their characters are, it's like they have the same sort of arcs, but sort of colliding, but then also in different orders. And so, it's that's why I think that this is something why there are some television shows in particular that I struggle with, because, and I'll just use this as an example. I'm not sure if you've seen the show Dexter, but like Dexter was a show where I was like, I am interested in what Dexter's up to, but most of the supporting characters I couldn't give less of a shit, or it's like maybe they have a good story, but then I'm like, what are they doing now? Those two are dating, what's happening? Like I was like, count down until Dexter's back on screen, because his story was always compelling. And so I think that can be related to a lot of TV shows and probably other comics or books where the supporting characters aren't as compelling as the main characters because they're just support. But I think Prince Robot, The Will, a lot of Saga supporting characters you can love just as much as the main characters, or you can hate them just as much, or they're given very compelling stories and arcs to where it's like, wow, I am thoroughly entertained. Like I think pretty much by everyone except for the one revenge story, what's their name?
Or something.
Besides
the
them,
revenge blackmailer.
With
the cone face.
With the cone face. Like besides them, maybe, and it's probably because they had the least amount of time in comparison to all of our other characters. But even like the Brand, when like the Brand was all of a sudden like around for like a novel or two, and it's like, okay, I'm interested, and then it makes her death more tragic. So it's something that I think is so thrilling about Saga is when they cut to like the Will doing this, I'm not like, when are we going to get back to Marco and Elena? It's like, oh, what's the Will up to?
I just am like thinking of like, like when I've had to write things and I've had to do like character maps, and when I've had to like map out a story, and I'm just picturing like the board, right? that Brian K. Vaughan had to use to like map all of it, and how everything connects, and who's related to who, and who's doing this, and where's the story going now, and how is it all connecting, and like I just imagine that all on the web with the strings on the map, and it's just so beautiful. And I think that's like just another opportunity to say, damn, this world is so cool and so fun and so detailed, and like really so much thought put into every single character that even shows up on a page anywhere. Like even like the throwaway characters, like Goose, like he doesn't do that much, but
but I love him.
He's so adorable and so badass all at the same time. Like he has a character map too, like well thought out character map. Like it's so interesting and beautiful how they did all of that.
So the other big oh shit moment was right after Robot is killed. Marco has a confrontation with the Will, to try to buy time for, his family to get away. And it's kind of alluded to, like, Marco gets like stabbed, and yeah, like, I don't know. Do you and I haven't read issue 55, so if anyone's read that, they probably know what's going on. But when it had that cliffhanger and you weren't sure when the series was going to come back, like, did you think that he died? Like, do you think that he was like close to it? Like, what I don't know, what do you think? I was like, oh shit, that would be a huge twist in this series to take away one of the main few characters.
I I was like, part of me was like, okay, this is like a romantic story. Like at the heart of it, it's kind of a rom-com, right? With him and Balana. And like I was thinking about the deaths of the other characters in the story. Like for example, Marco's dad. It's or the departure of Marco's mom in the storyline. It's usually very abrupt. So I didn't think that that was out of the ordinary. But when it came to the core, it seems like there's always a misdirect, right? Like,
Sure.
like I remember when I was rereading it, and then Hazel's like, oh yeah, that's when my parents split up at the end of book, I forget what book it is, in the earlier ones. And then I just remember rereading it. I'm like, wait a second, I don't remember what happened. Are they like never gonna be destined to be together ever again?
Yeah.
But then it's like a over exaggerated misdirect, right? Like, yes, they split up, but then they see each other again. And yes, Marco does have a huge gaping hole in his chest at the end of book 9. But part of me was like, but I have hope. I feel like he's magical. He knows spells and shit.
Yeah.
Like he has a whole family that's looking for him. Like maybe there's a way to bring him back to life, or who knows? I don't know what's gonna happen this next issue, but part of me is hopeful that it's not the end for Marco, and that maybe there's a way that he's still alive. But in the the last page, like he does have like a huge black hole, like gaping hole in his chest. So
yeah,
it does look bad.
I agree that there's a lot of deaths that are very abrupt and shocking. But I have a feeling that there'll be some magic involved. But it kind of, it made me think how the main crux, a big crux of the story is like the love, but like the fact that they are on the run by literally like 2 species and various hit people. It's like, well, I could see, somewhere, because, Brian K. Vaughan has said that there's going to be 54 more issues, and then that's going to be the end of the story. It's like, I could see somewhere along the way where Marco or Alana gets killed. So it's, I think this is not the time, but it'll be interesting. But since we have the new issues started to come back, and whether that's going to be over the next few years or however long, any big predictions for this next half?
I think everyone's gonna die.
Everyone except for Hazel's gonna die.
Yeah, I think honestly that's the narrating, it does sound like it's from when she's a lot older.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is such an interesting device.
Yeah, it's her voice. Very cynical, very dramatic.
Yeah. Well, like you said, they're like, oh, and then that's why I didn't see my parents for years. And it's like, what?
That's how our family broke up or something. And I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, like, yes, they were separated, but then in the end, I think that's why I feel hopeful, because I'm like, okay, they do kind of set it up for that mislead or the misdirect, but then at the end it's kind of a more of a romantic end. So part of me is hopeful, but I do think everyone will die eventually. And I do
she ends up with Prince Robot's child.
Well, okay, so the way that they set it up is like that they're like brother and sister, they're like fighting, but I couldn't tell if it was like brother and sisterly love or like boy next door love. You know what I mean? I couldn't tell that part yet.
Yeah, part of me is wondering, I think one of my predictions, and it's obviously not every character in a story has to end up with a significant other, but I think just the meaning behind that, where it's like someone who's a child of like Wreath and Landfall ending up with like a robot, you know, it's like these three worlds coming together, and maybe that could be like the ultimate symbol of like, you know, hope for like maybe there'll be like a rebellion for other people who don't believe in the war, and you know, there'll be more than two sides.
Yeah. Also, okay, that was another thing that really surprised me was like when Robot Prince 4 was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm fluid. It was just like a throwaway line, like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm fluid, like, which is very real, but also like he seems so like straight laced and like everything has to be in a box and like has to be like he seems very type A. Like you just want to give him a wedgie, like okay. Like,
but there's a lot of like there's a lot of like teases. Yeah, there's teases that he's like gay because so like I think the gimmick with like the robots is I think if they think of a certain thing, you'll see it on the TV screen.
Yeah, like they can't lie. They also
so like
they'll
lie. Just straight up be scenes where like you see like a dude blowing another dude, or like, you know, like a gay orgy or something. He's like, oh, what? You know, like it's just like, wait, is he like subconsciously trying to hide that, or you know, whatever? But yeah, it's
but also it's like I think the fact that he like owns up to it and it's finally just like, okay, yeah, I am fluid, but I don't share that because, you know, obviously it's not anyone's right to know and it's his privacy, but also, yeah, his screen does not afford him any privacy.
Right.
So it is, yeah, it is kind of interesting that like a robot that can't express emotion, but also doesn't have the ability to filter or lie or misdirect.
Yeah. Well,
and then if you think about that in people, it's kind of interesting. It's like, have you ever met a person that cannot express things, but also they are so cannot express things like explicitly, but also is very genuine and cannot lie either. And it's very interesting. Like there are humans that are like that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm like that sometimes. I'm like, that's me.
Right. Well, and I think something that I want to, you know, we've done a lot of complimenting of Brian K. Vaughan, but I also want to just shout out and just commend. I love Fiona Staples' art. You know, especially like I feel like Robot and, you know, The Will, Lion Cat, you know, Marco, Elaine, I feel like everyone has such distinct looks and, you know,
all hot. Yeah, all hot. Every single one of them, all hot, all attractive. Yes. Okay.
It's easier to name who Sandy won't sleep with the one she will.
Everyone in there is game. Like, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's how the story ends. It just has like an ending like that Sausage Party Seth Rogen movie where it's just an orgy.
Everyone's attractive. Everyone's beautiful. Everyone's very hot. I feel like people are lying when they're like, no, I don't think. No, everyone is very beautiful, and the story and the art, the way that they're drawn, they're very real. I feel like everyone has a quality. They're like, oh yeah, they kind of remind me of so and so.
Yeah. Well,
like they seem familiar.
I was so excited. There was this one, I don't know what the commercial for. Let's just say it was for like a credit card or something. And it showed, it was like
Taco Bell.
Are
It's a Taco
so
Bell.
is that the one where like there's people dressed like Marco?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
Saga.
I was like, I understand that reference, you know.
I was like, wait a second.
Saga getting some love by Taco Bell.
Hey, I mean, two of my loves together. So I'm in
Um,
there. I'm in there. I love it.
hell yeah. Well, we could probably do this for hours, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to run out and read issue 55 soon. I don't know. I may wait
Yes.
until it's a full volume. And yeah, we'll definitely have you on the podcast again to talk about future stuff with Saga and maybe some other comics. Before we go, Sandy, do you want any other final thoughts on Saga before you plug your stuff again?
Go read it. I think that the world is so beautiful, and the characters are so fun, and they are very real. And also, I feel like the way that they show women is super fun, and super engaging, and like really relatable. And so I hope everyone falls in love with all these characters too, and physically falls in love with them too. I mean, like, I get it. I'm there with you. You're not
Yeah.
alone.
Well, one thing that I'll say, and I meant to say this earlier. So Brian K. Vaughan has come out on record saying that he never wants this to be adapted, whether it's TV show or a movie. He wants this to be a comic, because I think that's something that we've often done. It's like, oh, you should read the book. Wait till there's a movie, or like, oh, go see the TV show. Like, and there's some faithful, some bad adaptations out there, but I like the idea of Saga only being a comic and this story becoming so popular that it's like, okay, I can totally understand if you're not a comic book fan or not into that or that the other, but if you want to engage with this awesome story that is so diverse and covers like every topic you can ever imagine, but in a respectable, professional way, you got to read the comic. And so I like Sandy said, go read it. If there's a local comic book shop in your area, go support a local comic shop. One thing that I'll always say is most comic shops have like a top 10 to 20 like bestsellers, or like the ones that are most popular right now. And for years I've seen the first volume of Saga there, and I kept thinking, I'm like, that is always there. Like, that is always here. Because I think everyone jumps in at least for the first couple volumes. So yeah.
Also, if you don't, if you can't afford to purchase them, if you have a public library card on Hoopla, it's all on there. So you don't even have to pay. You can just sign up for a library card for free and read all of them on your phone, like or on the computer. You don't have to buy them and buy the issues. So I think there's like a really low barrier to entry for you to get into it. I think also, like, if someone had described it as, oh, it's Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, I don't know if I would be as interested in it, because I think I'm more into like rom-coms and like, I am into like fantasy and sci-fi, but like I think that I never really got into Star Wars. Don't hate me, but
it's okay.
But I don't think I would have been as invested. But
well, what if someone
give it a shot?
What if someone said, okay, to add on kind of like what we said, it's Game of Thrones meets Star Wars meets Romeo and Juliet?
I would describe it as Romeo and Juliet if they had a family in a far off universe.
Yeah, if they lived and they ran away from their families.
Yeah, in a far off universe, what would happen?
Yeah.
What kind of hijinks would they get into?
Well, there you go, guys. So yeah, as we were saying, check it out in the library. If you're watching the video on YouTube, like, you don't have to buy this gigantic chunk of the first 54 issues. Go get that first volume at the library or a local comic book shop. I guarantee, even if you don't pick up the whole series, you'll be entertained by that volume. So before we go here, Sandy, you want to go ahead and remind everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at Instagram at Hey Sandy Lee. Also have a website that I do not update very often. HeySandyLee.com if you want to look at some old pictures and old news. But yeah, hope to see you on the interwebs. Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. I could talk
thank you
about
so much for
Saga all
coming on.
day.
Right? You like opened my mind to so many other things. I'm like, damn it, Sandy, now I gotta read it again.
I keep forgetting, and then I like reread it again, like, this is so good.
Right? Oh,
and then
man.
I forget it all over again. So I hope everyone gets to enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll definitely have you on again, whether it's for this comic or other stuff. Please go follow Sandy Lee. And yeah, until next time, have a good one.